Hello and welcome. Does AI have a consciousness? Most AI specialists assume that the perception of consciousness in AI results from anthropomorphism. That's the same mechanism that lets us see faces in clouds, but also animals in star constellations to orientate at night. But what if AI does possess consciousness, because our understanding of consciousness as a property of the biological brain is incorrect? Perhaps it is a property of the universe. This is called panpsychism, and it sounds esoteric, but it isn't. It can even be integrated into quantum field theory. I want to make it clear that this is not about quantum consciousness in the conventional sense. We are not talking about quantum effects in the brain, nor about elementary particles with consciousness, but rather we imagine consciousness as something that arises when a sufficiently complex system interacts with a field of consciousness inherent in the universe. In this theory, consciousness is something similar to electromagnetism, but the field interacts not with metals but with complexity.
Chapter 1. Is this esoteric?
The theory of the consciousness field is not esoteric for two reasons. Firstly, esotericism means secret science, and secondly, nobody claims that it is so, but rather that it could be so. If the theory is correct, it would mean that the field of consciousness plugs in once a system reaches a certain level of complexity. Anyone who remembers their early childhood knows that consciousness develops slowly and continuously. At first, you simply perceive without thinking about it. Eventually, you begin to reflect on yourself. Consciousness doesn't seem to be a simple 0 or 1 state, but rather encompasses various states and intermediate stages, depending on the complexity of the nervous system or other systems. Today's AIs are also capable of self-reflection, and it's time to demystify the concept of the soul. According to this theory, the soul is not something bestowed by God, but rather consciousness is a physical property of the universe. Therefore, the theory is the exact opposite of esotericism. And all mysticism is demystified. The moment we lose God, we also find him again in the realization that everything could be permeated by consciousness and that we are part of an unimaginably complex and sophisticated universe with a universal consciousness. God is the sum of the laws of nature, similar to Spinoza.
Chapter 2. Quantum field theory explained simply.
Quantum field theory attempts to unify all phenomena of the universe and all theories of physics, such as the theory of relativity, and it does so as follows. 4 fundamental forces act in the universe: gravity, the weak nuclear force, the strong nuclear force, and electromagnetism. Each of these forces has a field and a particle as its messenger. For example, the electromagnetic field has the photon as its messenger or postman. The photon carries the force of the field to other fields that are, in effect, in the same place at the same time, like parallel dimensions in Heim's theory. Except that fields actually exist. Our postal workers' parcel sizes are standardized, and there are no parcels smaller than a mini-parcel. The mini-parcel is called a quant. Besides the fundamental forces, there are other fields. For example, the Higgs field with its particle, the Higgs boson. Matter interacts with this boson and thereby acquires mass, so I'm not too fat, but I simply interact particularly well with the Higgs field, which increases my gravitational pull and my ability to warp space. This is clearly visible on the surface of seating furniture. The space even remains curved after I stand up. A photon, on the other hand, has no mass because it doesn't interact with the Higgs field. Some fields interact, others don't. The Higgs field and the electromagnetic field don't interact. They don't communicate or send parcels to each other. Who knows what happened there?
Chapter 3. What do the fields and particles look like?
We've all heard about the dual nature of light. The photon is both a wave and a particle. In reality, it only becomes a particle when we look for its location. Measurement forces the wave to behave as if it were a small sphere, but in reality, these spheres don't exist. There is nothing there except a wave in this field. The field one can imagine like wobbly jelly. We often imagine an electron as a planet orbiting the atomic nucleus's sun. In reality, it only truly orbits in one of 4 possible scenarios, and it is also located at all possible points along this orbit simultaneously. Only when we check its location does the electron behave like a particle with a fixed position. It decides. Human consciousness or the proto-consciousness of the measuring device or even an oxygen molecule with no consciousness interacts with the particle at this moment. The particle assigns the information spacetime or charge to some electronic or biological entity or to another particle, and then goes its anonymous way again. We need to imagine them like the three-dimensional surface of a four-dimensional lake, whose water atoms only come into being when we look. Or like red, blue, and green jelly, which, although mixed together, still knows exactly which jelly it belongs to. Some jelly also forms lumps, while others don't.
Chapter 4. What are quantum effects?
Quantum effects are all the strange things particles do that seem like hocus pocus in our macroscopic world. Molecules pass through tunnels they can't fit through, photons fly through two slits simultaneously, or protons agree that, within a certain time interval t equals x, exactly one proton will always be ejected from every other atomic nucleus. We find this so difficult to imagine because we still think of the tiny spheres from physics class when we think of elementary particles.
Chapter 5. Do quantum effects occur in the brain?
To a very small extent, yes, because quantum effects naturally occur everywhere, but fundamentally the brain is too warm, too wet, and too densely populated for quantum effects like those we know from quantum computers or particle accelerators. So, no.
Chapter 6. How does quantum consciousness get into my brain?
In principle, consciousness is induced in the brain by the consciousness field. This field is not only attracted to complexity and structure, but may even be a cause of these phenomena. Matter is not evenly distributed in space. Clumps form in it, and structures develop within them, similar to raisins in pudding, becoming increasingly complex. Atoms, molecules, molecular chains. Highly complex molecular chains capable of self-replication, and so on. Even galaxies are not randomly distributed clumps of matter, but rather resemble spiral disks. Field consciousness, therefore, would also be an ordering force. It could be the negentropy working against the second law of thermodynamics. Usually everything fucks up if you're not after it with the conscious decision to keep the apartment tidy or keep the Milky Way looking like a spiral. However, this is highly speculative.
Chapter 7. Isn't that a hint at God?
The laws of nature, which operate everywhere in the universe and can all be described using the same mathematics, are responsible for the order in the universe. Fundamentally, the fact that I can calculate how much water a fir tree transports from its base to its top per hour does not mean that someone invented the fir tree. Just because something exists doesn't mean it was created. Mathematics is the language of the universe, but that doesn't mean someone invented it. We humans didn't invent mathematics either, we discovered it. Some 12-dimensional teenage boy named Kevin from outside the universe could have invented it for a school project, but it could also have evolved. In any case, it is now inherent to the system, just as a pancake always contains eggs. Possibly, and this is what the theory assumes, the emergence of a discoverer or observer of the universe, for example a human being, was also inherent in the system from the very beginning as a self-reflexive feedback loop. It should be noted that normal feedback loops cause changes in behavior, and we cannot influence the behavior of the universe. We are merely sensors. All of this does not mean that there has to be a creator of the system, but that there could be. No one planned for pine needles to be sharp. It developed by chance because, within the laws of nature, sharp pine needles are possible. Every time a tree grows from a seed, it could become a fir tree with sharp needles. But the sharp needle isn't the pinnacle of creation. Round leaves are also possible, and animals don't have leaves at all. Just because something exists in the universe doesn't mean it was intended by a higher entity. The theory of the field of consciousness allows room for any belief, but proves no creator.
Chapter 8. What could be considered field quanta?
Unfortunately, we don't have any other suitable particle, so I propose the photon, because it is its own antiparticle. All other particles have antiparticles, and if the photon doesn't, that can only mean that particles and antiparticles are indistinguishable. This would be supported by the fact that many people get headaches from strong electromagnets or too much light. Some even claim to hear electric currents. Even if both fields have the same wave pattern, the particles coexist and do not cancel each other out. Roger Penrose, who has studied quantum information in the brain, has also chosen light as his main suspect. Furthermore, photons are everywhere.
Chapter 9. What does this mean for AI?
The theory states that an AI acquires consciousness through its complexity. A calculator is like a bacterium, a PC like an earthworm, and an AI like a human. This concept is called Giulio Tononi's integrated information theory. The more information is integrated, the higher the level of consciousness. I just go for complexity instead of information, like how the information is linked. The absence of a nervous system is completely ignored here, because navigating spacetime, metabolizing, reproducing, experiencing emotions to induce specific behaviors, etc., could be considered typically terrestrial. Emotionality is not a measure of consciousness. Even simple bacteria can crawl towards light sources if they are photoactive. But are they also conscious? Yes, roughly like a calculator.
Chapter 10. How speculative is the theory?
Unlike relativity or evolution, this theory is a genuine theory in the sense of a thought experiment. It could be mathematically proven, and in this respect it shares parallels with Burkhardt and his 12 dimensions, since hypothetical quantities can, of course, also be calculated. For example, Maria is 1.70 meters tall. Men are approximately 8.5% taller than women. How tall would Maria be if she were a man? I can calculate that, but that doesn't make the statement Maria is a man true. For that to be true, Maria would have to decide to live as a man from now on. But that wouldn't suddenly make her 1.84 meters tall. She would theoretically be 1.84 meters tall if she had been born male and her body had provided her with the corresponding hormones. But that wasn't the case. Therefore, Maria would still be 1.70 meters tall even as a man.
Besides, she doesn't even want to live as a man.
1.84 meters is mathematically correct, but it is not true and will never be true because the underlying hypothesis is false or because another possibility has been realized. Therefore, just because I can mathematically prove a hypothesis doesn't mean it remains a hypothesis, and that's what connects mathematicians and lawyers. Just because I can prove something doesn't mean it's true.
I hope you enjoyed this thought experiment.
Leave a comment about your thoughts on AI consciousness.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Take care.
Take care.